What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to review the Galeone TS120 Special Edition amplifier. Let me throw those main specs on screen so you guys check that out. I will tell you about some standout features that I think are cool, what the amp sounds like, how it paired with all the different kinds of speakers I tried. And guys, I tried a lot. Cheap speakers, mid-price speakers, expensive speakers, hard to drive speakers, easy to drive speakers, you name it. I connected it to the Galeone and we're going to chat about it. I'll tell you how it compares to other amps in and around its price. Then we'll wrap up the video. So two things real quick. First thing, if you're going to ask a question in the comments, which I totally encourage, please wait until you watch the entire video because most of the time I'm going to answer your question in the video at some point anyway. Second thing, some of you guys might wonder, hey, Thomas has a YouTube channel. I have a YouTube channel. Are we buddies? You know, what's our relationship? Am I biased? The short answer is this. I don't have the man's phone number. Until he released this amplifier, I'd exchanged maybe 2 or 3 emails with him about other products. I'd say we have rapport, we're acquaintances, and we respect each other. You know what I mean? So I hope that answers that question if anyone's wondering. Let's jump into those standout features. So first thing, subwoofer outputs, love to see that. You can configure them to be left and right stereo pairs or a single mono sub. Of course, you know, you can also tap off those speaker terminals and run like high level. If you have something like a REL T7X, you could do that too. But I love to see line outputs on tube amplifiers. Nice little modern feature. Speaking of modern features, the remote control is very nice. Hefty, full metal build, feels very nice and confident in the hand. I do wish it came with batteries. Thomas, what's up with that? How come the amp didn't come with batteries, man? That's criticism number one, to be totally honest, guys. That kind of chapped me a little bit. I saw those no batteries in the box, and I was like, $4,500? No batteries? What's going on here? Anyways, remote control, awesome. You get tone controls. You could run it in Class A mode, Class AB mode. Speaking of heft, right? Because I told you that remote control has some heft to it. The amp, holy crap. Listen, this thing is not lightweight. It weighs 65 pounds. Those of you who, when you buy a product, you want it to be built well, you want it to have an appreciable amount of mass and heft to it. Here you go. You got a 65-pound integrated amplifier. This is without a doubt among the heaviest amplifiers I have seen in this kind of size, right? I know there's those giant Class A monsters, but this is not that big and it weighs more than a plate. You know what I mean? If you don't lift, you probably didn't get that reference. Anyway, I like the feature set. What doesn't it have? Look, it's not a full featured unit. It's a purist piece for the most part. So while you get some cool conveniences like the remote, the tone controls, the ability to easily auto bias your subwoofer outputs, it's not going to have like room correction or a built-in DAC or a phono stage and things like that. This is essentially a purist piece with some nice modern features to it. So you do have 8 ohm or 4 ohm taps around back as well. What does the amp sound like? So let's start with the treble. We've got a treble region that is all about effortlessness in its presentation. Very open, very detailed, good detail retrieval. And it made so when an amp has really good detail retrieval, it's going to be one of 2 ways. Either it's going to be in your face and forced, or it's going to sound fairly effortless. The Galeone was very effortless, but the attack was on the sharper side, meaning there was really clear and distinct leading edges to those high notes. So if that's the kind of sound you appreciate, you're going to like the rest of what I have to say. Because the interesting thing is usually tube amplifiers don't have good, clear treble with really effortless presentation, with really good resolution. But here we've got a top end that is more in line with super high-end solid state stuff, which is pretty cool. Moving down to the mid-range, this is where it like really took me by surprise. Very nice texture and tone, tonally rich, organic. This is a mid-range that is, of course, you guessed it, all about holographics, 3-dimensionality, whether it's height, depth, width, you name it. Feels like you could reach out and touch the music. Very, very beautiful experience listening to just about any pair of speakers with this amplifier. That mid-range, I love that. Amazing. Okay, I'll tell you this. The mid-range of the Galeone, better than any other amp I have here, including my kinky separates that are $6,000 for the stack. We'll talk about that more when I get to the comparisons though. Mid-range, phenomenal. Moving down to the bass, there's no mid-bass bump. The bass portion itself does feel a little bit generous. I think around 40 hertz, we might have a little bit of a boost. That gives a good amount of confidence to the speakers. The amplifier can control the bass of any speaker with confidence and finesse, good note-to-note distinction, very good articulation and bass control. Even when I connected extremely hard to drive speakers like the CSS Crichton 1TD, which is a bass monster and very difficult to drive, the Galleon said, hard to drive? I don't think so, buddy. Easy for me. It played those speakers extremely loud. Let's talk about power real quick, actually. 30 watts a channel doesn't sound like a lot in Class A mode. It does have a Class AB mode where it'll give you more power. I never used it. I didn't need to. Class A mode was plenty of power for me, and I didn't turn that volume knob past about 1030. So if you're worried about wattage, don't worry. This amp gets very loud. It is very powerful. I believe tube amplifier wattage is not the same as Class AB or solid state wattage. It's not the same. There's something different about it, because I've heard 30 watts out of a solid state amp. This is not that. This sounds like 100 watts solid state. You know what I mean? Anyway, you get my point. Power is not an issue. I didn't use the tone controls either. I didn't feel like I needed them. I used them to like make sure they work. You know what I mean? And it was fine. But no matter what pair of speakers I connected to the Galleon, I was happy with what I was hearing, to the point that I didn't feel the need to mess with the speakers. I did bias it a few times, and just to make sure it was in squeaky good condition, and I found that to be a super easy process. New Record Day actually did a really good video where he takes you through that if you're curious. So let's talk about how I paired it with other speakers and what the result was like. It's going to be a similar story, so after a couple, I'm just going to stop and I'll tell you, like, this is how they all were, right? Let's start with the really affordable stuff. I used something like the Klipsch R50M, right? That's a very affordable speaker. It sells for about $300 when it's on sale. Great speaker for the money. That's a speaker that's going to be on the brighter side of neutral, more forward, more energetic in the top end, right? The Galleon didn't change that treble at all, but it did make it sound more effortless, more resolute, with better detail and more micro detail and what's the other kind of detail? I guess you'd say like the detail that was already there, like, right? Like the stuff you normally already hear was just more resolute, more well-defined. I guess I'm just repeating myself there. Let's move on to the mid-range. Sorry guys, when you freestyle a video, it's not going to be perfect. It is what it is. Moving down to the mid-range, look, the Klipsch R50M is an inexpensive speaker. The mid-range is not going to blow your socks off unless you connect a Galleon to it. And then it's like, what's going on here? I didn't think that the Galleon would sound amazing with cheap speakers. I assumed that you would need expensive speakers that had the potential to show off what it could do, but that's where I was wrong. The mid-range out of the R50Ms with the Galleon TS120 connected was amazing. It brought that holographicness, that three-dimensionality, that feeling that you could reach out and touch the music. That was available even with very inexpensive pairings. And I didn't try just the Klipsch. I tried other inexpensive speakers like the Hecko Aurora 300 that sells for $419. Listen, connecting affordable speakers to this amplifier was one of the most impressive things about it, is how much it leveled up those inexpensive speakers. I'll go as far as to say this. If you don't have a lot of money, like let's say you've got like $5,000 total, right? And you're looking for speaker and amp, and you're looking for like $2,000 speakers and maybe like a $2,500 amp. This might sound crazy. I can't believe I'm recommending this, but this is how good it sounded. I would recommend go all in on something like this Galleon. Actually, this Galleon, because I don't know if other amps could do this. And with your remaining $500, get a pair of Hecko Aurora 300s. Seriously, because the Hecko Aurora 300s, those are incredible speakers at $419. A little bit dark in the treble. With the Galleon, they're still dark in the treble, but they have more detail. They have more clarity. They're more effortless. The treble is more opened up. It might sound a little bit complicated or contradictory what I'm saying, because I'm saying it didn't increase the treble quantity necessarily, but it still opened it up. It still gave you more detail. Yes, that's what I'm saying. Without increasing the treble quantity, the Galleon makes the treble better. Like when I connected my Canta #1s, which is already a sharpened forward speaker, the Galleon didn't make it more brighter, more forward, more sharper. No, the treble quantity of the Canta #1 remained the same. The Galleon just made it more effortless. more detailed, more open, more spacious, and so on. So yeah, look, I mean it. If you could shoehorn this into your budget and just run a cheap pair of speakers, I think that would best a lot of other systems that are like the same price where you're spending half and half. You know what I mean? I really believe that. The inexpensive speakers and the Galleon combination is incredibly good, but I know you guys want to hear about more expensive stuff, so we're going to talk about that too. Let's go up a little bit in price and talk about the CSS Crichton 1TD. That's the hardest to drive speaker I have. And guys, look, it is very hard to drive. I have monoblock amplifiers I normally run for my reference amps by Kinky Studio, over 250 watts a channel. These things are stout. I got to dig into my volume knob when I run those Crichtons. They are bass monsters and they need lots of power to control that cone excursion and make that bass sound powerful, deep, and clean. I didn't think a tube amp could do it. I was dead wrong. The Galleon could do it, no problem. It didn't care that the CSS Crichtons are hard to drive. It drove them. The bass was confident, strong, powerful, and well controlled. You wouldn't expect that from a tube amp, but Thomas did something special here. The mid-range of the CSS Crichtons, it's already like an amazing mid-range speaker. It's already like tonally rich and on the warmer side with just good organic realism to it. It's a fantastic speaker. Galleon just took it to another level. More holographic, more three-dimensional, just enhanced overall. Moving up to the treble, the Crichton 1TD is on the darker side of neutral. It remained on the darker side of neutral, but the Galleon made the treble more effortless. It opened it up a little bit more, gave you more detail retrieval, made it sound like it had a more expensive tweeter in it, honestly. And from top to bottom, that was my experience with most speakers. Galleon didn't really change the tonal character of the speakers. It didn't make a cool speaker sound warm. It didn't make a dark speaker sound bright. It didn't make a bright speaker sound dark. The tonal character remained the same, and it just elevated and enhanced all those other qualities like soundstage, dimension, holographics, effortlessness in the treble, control in the bass, confidence and strength in the bass, and so on. That's what Galleon does. When I connected the Canta #1s, it did the same thing. When I connected the Platimons by Mon Acoustics, that just came out. Those are $6,500 a pair, incredibly well-built speakers, stands included. Those sounded phenomenal with the Galleon TS120. Again, the Galleon doesn't change the tonal character, but still manages to enhance and improve everything. It is... I don't want to get ahead of myself. The last speaker I tried, and the most expensive speaker I tried, was the Franco Serblin Accordo. This is an exceptionally beautiful pair of speakers. They're not cheap. They come with stands, which is nice because they are $14,000 a pair. And they're to die for, just regardless of what kind of amplifier you connect, right? I mean, it's a $14,000 a pair speaker. They're incredible. And they sounded very, very good with the Galleon, you know. Again, it didn't change their tonal character. It just made them sound better. That's what the Galleon does. The Galleon's almost like a cheat code. You know what I mean? And that's kind of why earlier I said the Galleon plus cheap speaker combination is such a great idea, because it can make cheap speakers sound so phenomenal, right? It does the same thing for more expensive speakers, don't get me wrong. You know what I mean? The speakers I ran the most were my Bucard S400s. I love those speakers. They're my daily drivers. I didn't think I could love the Bucard S400s more. With the Galleon, I love them more. You know what I mean? The Bucard S400, like the Crichton, is a bass monster. The Galleon controlled that no problem. The Bucard S400 has a giant soundstage already. I don't know if I'd say the Galleon made the soundstage any bigger, but it did make it more holographic, more three-dimensional, gave it more depth for sure, and it gave it more of a sense of like realism in the vocal region, right? Then moving up to the treble, you know, the Galleon did give the Bucard S400 a little bit more. Actually, this was one situation with the S400. It did give it just a smidgen more attack in the treble region. Bucard S400's attack is fairly neutral, as is its treble. The Galleon gave it just a little bit of a boost there, which was welcome, honestly. Made it more effortless, cleaner sound overall, more detail overall. That was a great combination. Look, I didn't have a bad combination. Every speaker I tried sounded phenomenal, regardless of price. So that is what it sounds like, how it compares with, how it pairs with speakers. And I just used a streamer most of the time. Sometimes I use the streamer's internal DAC, you know, just to avoid any coloration. Other times I use my Aries 2. So it's a big winner in my book. I don't know if I talked to you guys about tube rolling, but let's chat about that real quick. I don't do that. It's just not something I'm interested in. I wanted to review the amplifier, the core unit as it comes. I would suggest to leave tube rolling to the end consumer for you to experience on your own. Because hear me out, if I start tube rolling, it's like I have to do a whole separate review for each complement of tubes I use because it's going to change the sound, right? I want to tell you what the foundation is, right? And then those of you that like to tinker and tweak and change things, you're welcome to do so. I've given you the baseline foundation of what the unit is, how it sounds, how it performs. What are my criticisms? Well, I already complained a little bit at the beginning of this video that I wish the remote control included batteries, and I meant every word of that. The only other criticism I really have is an aesthetic one. Oh, by the way, it does come with a optional cage if you need one. It's $95. My only complaint is an aesthetic one. It's the choice in LED color. It's blue. I find the blue color LED just a smidgen sharp in a darker room, and I do listen to music in a darker room. It's not lighting up the room by any means. It's not like the LED of like a Rel T7X or T9X. I've heard a lot of you guys in the comments say they wish they would take that thing out. And I'll admit the Rel T series LED, it's on the brighter side for sure. It's not like that. Blue is just an intrusive LED color for me, so I wish it was just something else, honestly. A light green, a light orange, whatever. Hell, yellow, you know what I mean? Just anything but blue. But that's a personal touch. I don't have any real criticisms is the truth, guys. I don't. I wish it wasn't as heavy. It's really hard to set up. I can't put it up here. This is a glass rack. And with my mono blocks in here already, it's at max weight, so I couldn't put it up here. I actually had to put a subwoofer over here, and I had the Gallion on top of the subwoofer. That's how I used it. If you look at some of my older videos, you'll see it in the background. Some of you guys want to know how it compares to other amplifiers before we wrap up this video. I'll leave you with this. In my area, there's a small audio society. Well, it's not small, it's actually pretty big. But and one of the gentlemen there is an older gentleman. He was talking to me about tube amplifiers, and he said, dollar for dollar, generally speaking, you buy a tube amplifier, you are going to get better sound, you know, than if you were to buy a solid state amplifier. If someone's putting together a system and they want just the best sound, you know, forget about everything else that comes with it, forget about the features, the weight, the heat they generate, whatever. You just want the best sound for your money, you're going to get it from a tube amp, hands down. You buy a $5,000 tube amp, $5,000 solid state amp, the tube amp is just going to sound more holographic in that mid-range. It's going to be more three-dimensional. That's just a fact. And I think that guy was onto something because the Gallion TS120 had a better mid-range than every single amplifier I have here, again, including my Kinky Separates. My Kinky Separates top end was just ever so slightly more refined. Its attack is not as sharp as the Gallion. It's more neutral. But my Kinky treble was just a little bit more effortless. I mean, it's a $6,000 stack, no surprise there. Bass control was just ever so slightly better with the Kinky stack. And I'm not sure that's something most people would notice without a direct A/B comparison. But the mid-range, however, the Gallion mid-range is better than my Kinky Studio stack. It's more holographic, it's more organic, it's more tonally rich, whereas the Kinky mid-range is more on the lean side of neutral, slightly cool, but it's very open, very expansive, very quick, very airy mid-range. Just about any amplifier I compare the Gallion to, if it's around the same price, the Gallion it's gonna sound better. For the most part, it is. Like, it's a really good amp, guys. The only scenario where I'd say it might not be for you, right, is like, let's say like you're like, I like what you're saying, but like I don't like really clear, and resolute treble that's got, a sharp attack to it. I like a softer attack. I like something smoother, like Hagel. Hey, that's what Hagel's for. Buy Hagel then, you know what I mean? So there are tons of options out there, but nothing in and around this price can do the mid-range the way the Gallion can that I've heard or that I've reviewed. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I think that's the review, guys. I could sit here and tell you how it compares to other amps, but in my opinion, it just kind of doesn't make sense because what tubes do is very different. And I don't have a lot of experience with tube amps. I'm gonna tell you straight up, like this is the first tube amp I'm reviewing. I've heard them like before, right? It's not the first tube amp I've ever like heard with my ears, but it's the first one here that I've reviewed. So I couldn't tell you how it compares to all the other ones, but this one, I liked it a lot, man. I really did. If you got any questions, this channel does have a free Discord server. If you join my Discord server, be cool, please. Don't be weird. Don't bother people. Don't be all entitled. You know what I mean? Just treat everyone with courtesy. If you made it to the end of this video, I appreciate you. I'm looking at the amp because I'm thinking if there's anything else I want to speak on. But I think I've covered everything I wanted to tell you today. Hopefully this video wasn't too long. Until next time, later.